Hello, welcome to the Vertical Drop Viking. I'm Josef. Today I want to talk to you about my home park, Michigan's Adventure. We'll go over a brief history of the park, talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, share some of my worries about the future, and my hopes for how things can improve. Michigan's Adventure, like many of the parks now operating under the Cedar Fair Six Flags umbrella, started out as a regional theme park. It first opened its doors as Deer Park in 1956. For the first 2 years of its operation, the entirety of the park was a storybook-themed playground and a petting zoo. The park opened its first ride in 1958. That was a miniature train. First flat rides came in 1972 when the park was renamed Deer Park Funland. Now, the Spider Flat Ride that was introduced in 1976 was actually taken down after only 11 years of operating into the park and sold to Michael Jackson in 1987. Deer Park Funland opened its first roller coaster in 1979, an Aero Standard Corkscrew, one that was still giving janky but thrilling rides in 2025 and possibly beyond. My son and I got a chance to ride it on closing day 2025, and I personally thought it was much smoother in the front row than Cedar Point's similar Aero Looper. The pre-drop gives you a fun little kick of forward G's, and then after the drop, it's a turn, a corkscrew, and you're back home. This is me and my son in the front row. In 1988, the park changed management, and with that came the name change to the one that it's known by today, Michigan's Adventure. And a little aside for any national or international viewers, here in the Great Lakes region, we have a little idiosyncratic habit of adding an S to the end of some brand names, even though there isn't one. We call our regional chain of grocery stores Myers, even though the brand name is Meyer. We call Burlington Coat Factory Burlingtons. We call JCPenney Pennies. And this strange habit has been transposed onto this brand name in a big way. I would venture a guess as to say that within the state of Michigan, more than 40% of people think this place is called Michigan's Adventures. The possessive S in Michigan's, there's not an S in Adventure. The possessive S that's supposed to be in the brand name is confusing to tourists and outsiders, and then the waters are muddied even further when the locals add a second S where there isn't supposed to be. But back on topic, Michigan's Adventure. The new management hired Charles Summers to design them a new wooden roller coaster, Wolverine Wildcat, and hired the Din Corporation to build it. This partnership would famously go on to build 9 more wooden roller coasters, 3 of which are now some of the country's best RMC hybrids. Now, these wooden roller coasters in their original state are extremely rough. I remember being 12 or 13 when I rode Wolverine Wildcat first, and even at that age, I knew something was wrong with the thing. Even if I didn't know nearly enough about roller coasters, physics, or biology to begin to explain what was wrong with it. The profiling is wonky, the transition into those profiles is janky, and it jackhammers you pretty hard in the valleys. Martin and Vlaminx has been working on retracking it, but I'm still of the opinion that this coaster doesn't have much time left in its current state. I'm not even certain that they'd consider RMCing it in earnest. With only an 85-foot lift hill, it would be smaller even than the Medusa steel coaster. The double out and back layout would be fun to work with for RMC, but I'm not sure that Six Flags is willing to spend the money on this park, and we'll talk more about that later. In 1989, I was introduced, and so was the gondola wheel, as well as a couple other flat rides. The next year, they opened the water park, Wild Water Adventure, and it saw significant investment and expansion over the coming years. Unlike a lot of parks, the water park in Michigan's Adventure is basically enclosed by the amusement park, rather than separate from it. And admission to the front gate gets you into the water park as well. This was the source for their long-running 2 parks for the price of 1 ad campaign, which was ubiquitous on Michigan TV and radio throughout the 90s. Zach Zoomer opened in 1994. It's a CCI Junior wooden coaster. It's not nearly as rough as Wolverine Wildcat. The trains are painfully small for someone my size. When I took my son on this ride as his first real coaster, I was crammed in like biscuits in a can. and the ride operator probably should have disqualified me, but instead he just looked sorry for me and sent me on my way. The Zack Zoomer is a good, fun coaster, especially for a kid's first thrill ride. This partnership with CCI would seem to be an omen of good things to come when construction began on Shivering Timbers in 1997. When it opened in 1998, it put the park on the map for coaster fans. Now, this is one of my favorite roller coasters ever. Even if I ride 100 Woodies, this will be the one that made me fall in love with them. I had ridden Blue Streak, Gemini, and the Wolverine Wildcat before I ever touched this one, and while they were enjoyable in their own rights, none of them were quite like Shivering Timbers. I think that Airtime Thrill said it best when he described this coaster as a B&M Hyper made out of wood. This coaster is just airtime, 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 half a helix, airtime, 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 and you're back home after a full helix. The coaster just launches you into the sky over and over and over again. Now, it's been showing its age lately, but they've been smoothing out sections with Titan Track, piece by piece, and so far it seems like they're winning the battle. It'll be interesting to see if they keep making this incremental investment into Shivering Timbers, or if they decide to do something more drastic. After 1998, there was the addition of another kid coaster, the Big Dipper, as well as one of the more beloved Wild Mouse coasters in the Midwest. Just watch out for that last break, because it'll give you and your kids both whiplash if you're not ready. And then, after that, as far as coaster nerds are concerned, nothing. The park was in talks with Morgan to design them a hyper coaster to compete with Magnum XL. Cedar Fair bought the park, canceled that Morgan Hyper, added an upcharge flat ride in the form of the Ripcord, which is a sky swing, moved the Swan boat from Maverick's Heartline turned S-Curve Pond into Michigan's Adventures Pond, and then eventually moved Geauga Lake's Vekoma SLC to the north side of the Swan Lake Pond. And that is the last major investment in this park, all the way back in 2008. A relocated Vekoma suspended looper. They've added one flat ride since then, but it's for kids. And since then, this place has just been aging. In 2022, the park joined its sister park in Cedar Point and extending the season to Halloween, theming the park in spooky autumn decor and introducing haunted attractions. This only continued through the 2024 season. Though the reason for ending the Fall Festival in 2025 was not given publicly, I have a hypothesis or two. And that brings us to today. Six Flags and Cedar Fair are one company and have been one company for an entire summer season. The results are, so far, looking pretty scary for the new super chain. Attendance was below their projected levels basically across the country. And when sales performance doesn't meet expectations, shareholders start selling their stock. This gives the company less money to work with, which has a negative impact on the park, which has a negative impact on the customers who spend less money at those parks, which has a negative impact on the company. You can see how this becomes a feedback loop very quickly. And Six Flags is in a bit of a tailspin right now in an attempt to correct this. They've already announced a permanent closure of Six Flags America in Maryland, which is a move that surprised a lot of people. Six Flags America must have just been absolutely bleeding money if the huge corporation thinks it's smarter to completely wash its hands of it than to try and make any more money out of it. If you look at the rides of Six Flags America, it's not impossible to imagine that the maintenance cost for these coasters was starting to get steep. Six Flags America had 8 coasters that were over 21 years old. Another Din Woody, another Vekoma suspended looper, a GCI Woody, a B&M floorless that was not only converted from a stand-up but moved across the country after originally being built and operating in Illinois, and a Wild Mouse that was built and operated in Illinois and was moved across the country. All of these coasters were old enough to where replacement talk had to have at least been on the table. And that is a lot of replacements to talk about at once. Now, if we take that logic and we apply it to my home park over here, Michigan's Adventure could be in a lot of trouble. It's in the exact same boat as Six Flags America was. It has no new rides that are reliable and cheap to maintain. It's got many old rides that are getting more expensive to maintain as the years tick by. And it's been owned and operated by the same company as Six Flags America all year now. I visited the park on its last day of operations in 2025, and I have to say that it felt like Six Flags has already started to pack it in on Michigan's adventure. The line to park was backed up a long way. Only 2 of the kiosks were open. Only one of the kiosks had a person working inside, the leftmost one. The other one was digital only, all the way over on the right. Why the other several digital kiosks weren't open, I can't say, but it would have done a lot to alleviate the backup here. Someone about 3 or 4 cars ahead of us had trouble with their parking pass, and the gate would not open for them. They walked back and forth twice between the rightmost and leftmost kiosks, trying to ask the attendant for help. Whatever the attendant told them clearly did not help them. Eventually, a lady behind me in line got out of her car, ran up to the kiosk, and scanned her gold pass and got the Stuck family out of everyone's way and freed us up to go in. We found a parking spot in the row straight out from Mad Mouse's lift hill, quite nearly to the end of the lot, and after a short hike, we were inside. There was a decent wait for the Mad Mouse, but my son wanted to warm up on a calmer coaster, so we waited in line for about 40 minutes for the Mad Mouse. We accidentally found ourselves at first in the special access line, which is the exit line. We turned around and went back and got into the regular line, and after about 25-30 minutes in the regular line, the young couple in front of us bailed, and we were still 10-15 minutes back. We then saw that young couple that was in front of us go through the special access line and just get on the ride, no questions asked. So I guess those are the pitfalls of being honest. They had 3 cars on the track. Only one of them was ever between the lift hill and the final brake run at any given time. One car was always at the station. One car was always stuck on the brake run staring at the station. I know I mentioned it before. This final brake run on the Mad Mouse is rough. There's nothing slowing you down before it, and it stops you on a dime. So if you have kids on the ride with you, hold on to your kids. If you're just on there for the credits, watch your neck. After this, we hiked up a little way. We rode the corkscrew. It was only operating 1 train. It was still a pretty short wait. My son and I lucked out, and we got offered to bump up ahead a few positions and take the front row so that the group in front of us could take the whole next train. I have to say I've ridden this Aero Looper as a teen, and I've ridden corkscrew at Cedar Point, both as a teen and as an adult, and I found this to be much, much smoother. And also, before I rode this ride, I never knew that the front row on Aero Loopers has leg room. I'm a very tall man. I like to say that I'm exactly as tall as the maximum height requirement on any ride, and not an inch taller, so please don't check. And this leg room on the front of an Aero Looper was a godsend. I will never ride another Aero Looper unless I can get that front spot and stretch my legs out. If you're over 6'2", 6'3" even, I would recommend waiting for that front row unless you see me in line behind you. I really enjoyed this ride. Everything I'd seen on Coaster YouTube before my most recent ride had me expecting it to beat me senseless, and it did. Speaking of Coaster YouTube bringing my expectations down, our next cue was for Thunderhawk. Now, if you've watched any of the many great roller coaster enthusiast channels here on YouTube, you're probably familiar with the hate that is heaped upon the Vekoma suspended looping coaster. If you're not familiar, the short version of the story is that the company Vekoma took an idea that was innovated by another company, Bolliger and Mabillard. They ripped it off and they mass-produced it. Vekoma came along and made the Pepsi to B&M's Coke. But in a market where the difference between buying a Coke and buying a Pepsi was $4 million. Every park in the 90s wanted an inverted coaster. They were all the rage. But only the cream of the crop could afford a B&M, and B&M could only make so many of theirs at once. So the SLC from Vekoma became far more prolific in turning up at every regional park that could afford any roller coaster, while the B&M inverted remained more elusive, like a legendary beast that had to be sought out. I think the SLC deserves its own video, but for now I'll come back to where I started this tangent, and that's that coaster nerds hate the SLC. It's everywhere, and it's not as good as a B&M inverted, therefore it is bad. And I went into this ride, Thunderhawk, my very first SLC, expecting it to be just as bad as Coaster Tube told me it would be. I went in expecting a painful restraint, janky transitions, and a rough ride. And Thunderhawk was fine. My only other inverted coasters have been Raptor and Wicked Twister, and Thunderhawk was certainly no Raptor. But I thought it was way more fun than Wicked Twister by a long shot. Perhaps that's not a fair comparison, as Wicked Twister isn't a full circuit coaster, but still, Thunderhawk was fun. I'm a sucker for big looping Immelmans, and I like dive loop, and the SLC throws two of them at you in a row right after the first drop. I thought the layout was honestly great. Obviously, when you hold the Thunderhawk up to a B&M invert, it comes up short in a lot of places, but Michigan's Adventure is conspicuously absent of any other strong steel coasters at all, much less a B&M invert, and I'm certain that that logic applies to a lot of other regional parks in the country that proudly still run their SLCs. In any case, I didn't bang my head on the shoulder restraints, it didn't shake me up. I had a very smooth ride on the Thunderhawk the second time that I queued for it, because the first time we got all the way to the station and the ride went down, which is a huge bummer. They were running two trains. When we finally got back in line later that afternoon and rode it, the operations were pretty slow on those two trains. When we got back to the brake run, the other train was still loading, and we sat there for quite a while on the brake run staring at the station again. Staffing on this day seemed incredibly thin, and they were struggling to get these trains dispatched, even with the thin crowds. We went to one of the drink stations, but it was closed. There was a trash can pushed in front of the line to block it off. So we headed to Shivering Timbers, one of my favorites, but it was closed for testing when we got there. So we doubled back and went to the water park for a bit. We rode two of the slides. The lines for those slides was somewhat long, especially for the capacity they were putting through. We finished the water park at 5, went to another drink station, found it closed, another trash can blocking it off. We got our Thunderhawk adventure out of the way, and then that was it. The park had been advertised as being open until 7 when I purchased the tickets, but at 6, the loudspeaker started announcing that the park was now closing. I asked a nearby security guard, and she said, 6 now, and shrugged and walked away. The season was over, the fall festival was canceled, and that was that. What Michigan's Adventure does right. This park is great for smaller kids. Woodstock Express, not that one, that one, and the Zach Zoomer are both great beginner coasters that got my older son hooked on coasters at half the age that I did. I can't speak for the entirety of the country, but here in the Midwest, Cedar Point and Six Flags Great America don't have nearly the same selection of flat rides and exciting rides that are specifically for kids, ranging from the most basic thrill rides up to solid kids coasters. Cedar Point has Camp Snoopy, Woodstock Express, the Blue Streak, with very little in between. Great America has Sprocket Rockets, Little Dipper, and Whizzer, which are all pretty daunting ride for the youngest park goers. Michigan's Adventure just offers more for families with very young kids, especially when you factor in that the entrance to the splash pad is a 3-minute walk from the entrance to Thunderhawk. What Michigan's Adventure does wrong, at least this time. Honestly, it felt like every corner that could be cut on this closing day was cut. If they could have funneled us in, taken our money, told us everything was closed, and funneled us out, I feel like they would have been happy to do so. And I feel like that level of disdain is a bad indicator of how the employees feel about the future of the park. While we were on the second water slide, my baby and his lovely mother were sitting by the wave pool, and she said that when they started kicking the kids out of the wave pool at 5, they were outright yelling and screaming at people. Not a single drink station was open. I was not able to cash in my drink package all day. I ended up buying a syrupy lemonade from a vending machine in a slide line in an attempt to hydrate. After the machine had already taken my credit card, I learned that it was out of water. That's why I got the lemonade. It felt like the park was running on a skeleton crew, and that the crew knew it. And I hope I'm wrong when I say it felt like the crew knew something we didn't. I don't say this from a Karen standpoint. I've been in the service industry, bar industry, and music industries for my entire adult life. I'm about as pro-worker as you can get. I'm telling you by experience, these workers were not having a good time. Maybe they're just angry that the fall festival was canceled with a month's warning, which cut their summer gig in half. Maybe, but hopefully not, but maybe they know the park is facing the act this off-season and that their jobs could be gone regardless. The park's future feels very uncertain. So what's next for the park? What could turn it around? I think there are a few possible futures we could find ourselves in. The worst case scenario is that Six Flags will sell the park to someone who isn't interested in operating an amusement park. This could be a real estate developer, the Muskegon County Parks and Recreation Authority, really anyone else. The land is beautiful, the lake is cut off from all the pollution and gunk that plagues the shorelines of the Great Lakes by the bigger cities. Now, that would spell the end of our regional coaster park, and honestly, it doesn't seem like all that unlikely of an outcome. Now that Six Flags has literally come out and said publicly, we have too many parks, we're closing our low-performing parks. And considering the amount of money that's gone into and come out of both Cedar Point to the east and Six Flags Great America to the west, it may be redundant for Six Flags to keep Michigan's Adventure open, and counterintuitive for them to sell it to a potential competitor. That brings us to our second scenario. Six Flags could sell the park to someone who is interested in operating an amusement park. Now, this would, again, potentially work against the interests of Six Flags. They just firmly established a monopoly on roller coasters in the Midwest, and they really don't have to give it up to anyone if they don't want to. But since the park doesn't really compete with Great America or Cedar Point on a thrill ride level in any substantial way, it might not be that crazy to think that Six Flags might sell it to someone who will keep buying flat rides, tear down Wolverine Wildcat to avoid that maintenance cost, and keep operating as an independent park. The third scenario is that Six Flags just does nothing to it. Keep everything the way that it is, let it keep making whatever money it's making, hold on to the property, hold on to the assets, let it sit for a season or two longer. Maybe it's not losing the money that Six Flags America was losing. Maybe it's just putting along, and the continued lack of investment in it because it's not a squeaky enough wheel to get any of the grease. It's hard to say from the outside, but it is plain to see from the outside that Cedar Point and Great America are getting money thrown at them hand over fist, with Wrath of Rakshasa, Siren's Curse, and Top Thrill 2 all opening this season, while Six Flags is perfectly content closing Michigan's Adventure 2 months early with no fanfare. This outcome is, I'd say, just as likely as the first two scenarios, and I'm not sure which of the three likely ones I would rather happen. And then we have my dream scenario, that Six Flags actually invest in the park, brings in a modern attraction or multiple modern attractions over the next few years, and that the new foot traffic makes the place profitable again. When I say modern attraction, I don't mean another flat ride like Ripcord. I mean a whole new roller coaster, or an RMC conversion of Wolverine Wildcat, or, dare I say it, an RMC conversion of Shivering Timbers. I realize how sacrilegious that last one sounds, losing our great CCI Woody and transforming our most iconic roller coaster into something different. But even the most die-hard Shivering Timbers fans would have to admit that the iBox conversion of the coaster would bring in people from across the world to ride. It's commonly held to be among the best out-and-back coasters ever made. That layout with the huge camelback, tight helixes, and all that big, wide CCI support structure would make for an insane RMC coaster. If the old Woodies in the park aren't RMC'd, eventually they're going to be 100% Titan tracked anyways. It's just going to take the park 7 seasons to do it. Now, besides an RMC conversion, my dream pick for a future addition to the park will be something that you can't get at either Great America or Cedar Point. Now, both parks have B&M wing coasters. Both parks have big hyper coasters. Shivering Timbers already fills the airtime-heavy out-and-back niche that would be filled by a B&M Giga coaster. I think the least likely option, but the coolest option, would be if Six Flags purchased the first S&S Axis coaster in the U.S. and put it here. At Great America or at Cedar Point, an S&S Axis coaster would be viewed as just another gimmick coaster. But at Michigan's Adventure, it would be an absolute show stealer, a standout coaster. And again, it could reinvigorate the park's attendance in a big way. Barring that, a mock extreme spinner would be a great choice, especially considering the popularity of Time Traveler in Missouri and Ride to Happiness in Belgium. Now again, these mock extreme spinners would barely make a blip at Cedar Point or at Six Flags Great America, And in fact, the concept that they're suggesting for a mock extreme spinner to replace King Ka in New Jersey is causing downright outrage on the internet. But a coaster like that would be a revolution here at our little park, Michigan's Adventure. Ultimately, we'll have to wait and see to find out what the future holds. If you enjoyed my video, please consider giving me a like. If you want to see more videos from me, subscribe to my channel. If you think I'm an idiot for enjoying the Thunderhawk, please let me know in the comments. I promise I'll read them all. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. Vertical Drop Viking out.
Michigan's Adventure. Wild water adventure. Two parks for the price of one.
Michigan's largest amusement park opens this Saturday. At Michigan's Adventure and Wild Water Adventure, you get 2 parks for the price of 1. There's something for the whole family.
Michigan's Adventure.
8 miles north of Muskegon. Russell Road exit off US 31.
Hello, welcome to the Vertical Drop Viking channel. I'm Josef. This is my travel report from my trip 2 days ago to Cedar Point for Halloween weekends. I gathered 4 of my friends to join me on a trip all the way from Flint, Michigan here to Cedar Point in Ohio. One of my friends, Sarah, already loves roller coasters. Her boyfriend, Tristan, was more on the fence. He hadn't been on one in several years. My friends Jay and Haley came with me specifically because they're afraid, and they wanted some encouragement from me. They came in with the fear in them. My goal for the day was to ride as many roller coasters as possible, obviously. But I went back in August with my dad and my son. I wasn't able to ride Rougarou. I wasn't able to ride Steel Vengeance. Rougarou was closed for the whole weekend way back in August, and Steel Vengeance, my dad didn't want to ride it because he had PTSD from the mean streak back in 1991. My son didn't want to ride it because he was intimidated by the wooden structure. So neither one of my companions would wait with me in the line, and I didn't get to ride it back then. And since then, I've been watching all these roller coaster YouTube channels. Seems to be everyone's favorite, Steel Vengeance, and so I knew I needed to get back before the season was over. So I gathered my friends and off we went. The weather called for some rain early on and clearer skies in the afternoon, but that rain never came. We had beautiful weather all day, clear skies with fluffy clouds blowing by. We had a beautiful, cool lake breeze all night after dark. I can't complain about a thing. Like it was beautiful weather all day. The park entrance traffic was good. It was better than Michigan's Adventure was last month. They had all the kiosks open to get into the park. Things were moving along pretty well. I feel like I might be cursed where every time I go, somebody thinks they're gonna cheat the system by getting into the season pass only lane without a season pass. But luckily this time it wasn't the person in front of me, it was the person to the left of me, so it didn't hold me and my friends up this time. And we were able to make it into the park right as the gates opened. It would be good for Jay and Haley, since they wanted to ride adult rides. They didn't want to start with kiddie rides. And I think that the scariest part of any roller coaster is the lift hill, the anticipation and the suspense of the build-up of, oh man, what did I get myself into? Just when I was a new rider, I feel like that was where my mindset was. So I thought, get them around that and get around one of the longest lines in the park historically by getting Maverick done first. And so that's what we did. We walked through the gates and beelined it all the way back through the Millennium Midway, and we get to check out the cool Frontier Town decorations, in the daytime, because Halloween weekends they turned all of Frontier Town and then a little bit past the edges of Frontier Town into a haunt. And we passed through all of that, and we got in line for Maverick. We were in line for about 15 minutes for Maverick.
All right, we're about to do our first one. What do we think?
I'm a little scared, but I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah? You don't want to talk about it? We'll see how we feel after we get through this. So what's the verdict, guys?
It gets worse from there.
Oh yeah, it gets worse. Or better if you want to call it. I don't know about worse.
We rode it. It was great. Haley and Jay were they had an okay time, but they were scared. They were turned off by the intensity of the first ride. Haley closed her eyes, which didn't help. I told her that was a lot like staying at home and putting herself in the dryer. So they decided they wanted to go on a lighter ride second, and I said that's okay, but while we're back here, we have to get Steel Vengeance out of the way. So they didn't. I thought they were going to wait for us. They ended up sneaking off to Iron Dragon and upsetting their stomachs while we rode Steel Vengeance.
Well, we already lost Jay and Haley. They did not want to do Steel Vengeance.
We're at ride number 2.
Yeah,
Steve's
ride number two. And yeah,
But we're
Maverick.
pumped. We're pumped.
They're redoing Maverick. We are pumped. We're doing this. We'll see
Maverick
on
the second time's gonna break them in.
Hopefully, we're hoping they're a little. Hopefully, they keep their eyes open this time. We'll see on the other side.
This ride was why I planned the trip to a big degree, and this ride was absolutely incredible. I've never experienced airtime anything like that. Nobody's experienced airtime anything like that on any other roller coaster because it's the record holder. And they're quite proud of it. The hang time on the 0G rolls is probably my favorite part of the entire ride. All the ejector on it, like just whipping you up out of your seat over and over again. It was really something else. Got to the end, and the attendant called out, if your lane is empty, you can ride again. And me and the stranger who was sitting next to me were in a lane where the line was empty, and we rode it immediately again afterwards. We had to re-ride Steel Vengeance, and it was incredible. It was really, really good. And then we ended up coming back around at the very end at quarter to midnight and riding Steel Vengeance to close out the night as a night ride. It might be better as a night ride. It's hard for me to say because I got to ride it twice as a day ride and once as a night ride, but they were right on par with one another. So I think it's safe to say if you can get a night ride on Steel Vengeance, you should take the night ride on Steel Vengeance. My one gripe with this coaster is that it is not kind to tall riders whatsoever. The exception of the Cedar Creek Mine ride that right next door, this is the single most painful restraint in the park for somebody who is over 6'6". Even though I managed to secure myself some like good breathing room between my thighs and the actual lap bar, which is good because you spend half the ride against the lap bar and not against the seat. That's the idea. There's shin guards. There's extra braces. They're hard plastic braces. They're probably about 8 square inches up firmly against your shins. And I'm certain that they're meant for a regular sized human being to lift up into them when you're upside down. But for me, and if you're a tall rider, the shin guards are a permanent staple, or your shins are stapled to the shin guards. And then when you get that ejector airtime, it's forceful, like it's pressing those shin guards into your shin bones with about 1 G worth of force. So for me, about 230 pounds worth of force over 8 square inches, and it's hard plastic. So I have bruises on my shins from Steel Vengeance, and no other part of my body is sore from 13 hours of riding coasters on Friday. Today's Sunday. So the pain is worth it for me, but I've been beat up a lot in my life for one thing or another. So if you have a pre-existing shin injury or leg injury, if you're 6'6" or over, if you know that you have a low pain tolerance or you are recovering from any sort of surgery or anything like that, definitely want to be careful about Steel Vengeance. This ride might exacerbate it. Those I don't know if if RMC's newer trains don't have the same shin restraints, I'm looking forward to riding one. Because I'm also looking forward to riding Steel Vengeance again, but it hurts. It hurts the shins.
All right, that was awesome. We just got on Steel Vengeance, and I finally got to ride it, and we got all the way through back to the station, and they said if there's nobody in your line, you can ride again. And I rode it twice. I came here in August, I didn't get to ride it, and the fates lined up for me today. I got to ride it 2 times in a row, and I am very into it.
Next up, we tried to ride Gemini, but the ride was closed all day, and that's a huge bummer for me. I am in love with the line of Gemini. I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but the Q line of Gemini is just, I think because it's like squirreled away, it's tucked in like into the corner, like the ride itself sort of blocks you from the rest of the park while you're in the line. And then the line, like, so something about it like so obviously was built in the 1970s, and it's just got this 1970s vibe. Like, I feel like when you're standing in that line, you can just like, you can hear Steely Dan playing in the background, and like, it's not, but like, it's just, that vibe is just so like, tangible there. I was really hoping to get some video footage of that Q area to show you, because I figure nobody else maybe is as weird about this like unusual place as me. I wanted to be able to show you guys what I mean, but I don't think I'm going to be able to find stock footage of it. So next year, if I make it back to Cedar Point next year, I'm going to definitely get some footage of this line so I can maybe show you guys what I'm saying. And I don't know, maybe I'll throw together some yacht rock to play underneath it. Magnum XL 200. This is an amazing walk-on ride. Nobody wanted to ride it in the morning, and then we actually rode this again at night. Nobody was there again either. The triangle airtime hills on the return trip on Magnum, there's something else. Like Arrow didn't know what they were doing, and blessed them for it, because if they knew what they were doing, Magnum wouldn't have been what it is, and it still wouldn't be what it is. But the jank is real. You feel the transitions, especially that reverse helix at the end. You feel moving into it. It's a beautiful ride. It's beautiful going out over the beach, and then the night ride is an experience all in itself. Especially the lights in the last tunnel and then the airtime hills. It hits so hard. I love the Magnum. This is another one where if you have like easily sore neck or anything like that, you might want to leave the Magnum alone. Stick with the B&Ms. But if you like forces, if you like airtime, you cannot skip the Magnum. Top Thrill 2. I love Top Thrill 2. I think it's way too short. But at least it's better. It's not as short as Dragster was, and I think that it's a far superior ride to Dragster, like to the original Top Thrill Dragster. We got in this early enough that we waited about 20 minutes. Honestly, one of our longer waits for the day. But I think this is such an upgrade to the original Top Thrill Dragster. I know that you lose a little bit of torque, you lose a little bit of acceleration at the beginning, a little bit, like it's not 0 to 110 or 120 right off the rip. You start at 70 or 80 and then you come back up to 100, but the loss of that torque at the beginning, the loss of that initial torque is made up for, in my opinion, tenfold by the hang time when you go up the reverse spike. And that, not even to mention the exhilaration of getting up to speed to go up that spike. But if you can, sit in the back of this train. If you only have to wait one car through to get in the back of this train, wait. It's worth the wait, because that trip up that back spike, if you're in the back of the train, you use every single bit of that back spike, and every bit going up and every bit going down. And it's such a long train. The front of the train does not have the same experience. It just can't. It's physics.
We just got Top Thrill 2 done. Had a great time. Loved that back reverse spike. Sending you up 400 feet in the air. We're gonna get some Dippin' Dots.
Next, we did Valraven. Valraven, coaster nerds, to a degree, say that I'm not supposed to like this coaster. In fact, I wrote part of this before I went, and then the ride operator teased me for how much I like this coaster because he is one of these coaster nerds. So they're really out there. People tell me I'm not supposed to like Valraven. I think I've heard all the criticisms about Valraven that the internet has to offer. I've heard that it doesn't do enough. I've heard that the mid-course brake run kills the action. I've heard that the forces aren't enough. I do not agree with these criticisms. I love this ride. I think this ride is great directly over the track. I think this ride's great over the wings. I think the vertical drop is one of the best parts of the entire park out of Cedar Point, as you can tell from my channel name. I love how smooth the ride is while still giving you like incredible positive G's at the bottom of that first hill. I love that Immelman turn, which everyone calls an Immelman turn, but really I think it looks to me more like B&M's take on a sidewinder, because you're not coming back the way that you came. You're going firmly to the other, or firmly to the side out of that loop. But it's twisty like a B&M. It's not like an old school sidewinder from a 90s coaster. But I love how this ride manages to make you feel like you're floating through all the inversions. Comparing it to the Millennium Force, where you feel like you're being like dragged violently forward, and I love that feeling too. I also love the feeling of just like I'm a stunt pilot, and I feel like B&M does that in a way that no other company can do. I don't know why enthusiasts give it the hate that it gets. As far as the mid-course brake run over the second dive, Valraven and the other dive coasters that have mid-course brake runs, and the other B&Ms that have mid-course brake runs in general, have more of a dynamic pacing than a relentless pacing. And I understand that some people don't like a dynamic pacing. I think that pacing on a roller coaster is a lot like pacing of a song. An Intamin is like a Slayer song. It is fast, it hits you relentlessly, and it doesn't let up until the very, very end. And then you get to figure out what happened to you in the aftermath. And I love that. I love Slayer songs, and I love the Millennium Force. But not all songs should be Slayer songs, and not all good songs are Slayer songs. Some songs get mellow after they get heavy, and they get mellow, and then they get heavy again, and they take you on a journey. And I think that Valraven's pacing, and again the pacing of a lot of coasters that aren't relentless force assaults, and it's dynamic, and I think it should be celebrated. I think Valraven benefits from this dynamic pacing, and that's why I think Valraven is the most underrated coaster for coaster enthusiasts at Cedar Point. We got a day ride and a night ride in on Valraven. The day ride had one of the longer lines of the day because the general public does enjoy this coaster. The night ride was pretty much a walk-on though, which is great. I was able to ride the right and left wings on this trip, and then on my last trip in August, I was able to ride both the middle and sort of distant, center, distant but not the middle. And I can confidently say that where you sit on this ride does make a difference. But I think that the people anyone who says this ride doesn't do enough needs to get on a front wing or on a back wing before they say that confidently. because there's variance in these seats. Rougarou was up next, and this is also where we met back up with Jay and Haley. This is the coaster that turned the day around for Jay and Haley, and I'll be thankful to Rougarou for it forever. I think it's fair if you want to call me a B&M fanboy. I haven't rode a B&M coaster that I don't like, but I don't have any complaints about Rougarou. I think that the vertical loop, especially that first vertical loop, is just a perfectly designed element. I think that big flowy helix hill is a surprising little kick of like lateral G's. And then the angled loop is just such a cool element, and I don't know where else you're able to find an element like that. I'm sure there are some other B&M floorlesses that have angled loops, but I don't know where the closest one is. Then dive loop afterwards is cool. You can tell that it's sort of one of the earlier dive loops, but it's still just smooth as butter. I really enjoyed Rougarou, and we had to get Jay to ride it first, and I had to stand with Haley and talk, give her a pep talk, and she cussed me out a bunch.
Jay is riding this coaster first
So that Haley can be reported back to by a sane person who's not me
Great man.
that the ride's not crazy on
I don't like
Rougarou.
the loop.
How many loops have you been on?
I'm getting too pressure.
How many loops have you been on?
My eyes weren't open, but I felt loose.
You did no loops. You did some barrel rolls on Maverick, and today you're gonna do some loops on Rougarou. Tell the camera.
I'm gonna do the loop.
Hell yeah.
I'm gonna do the
Jay
loop.
came down and told Haley, no, Josef's not a liar. It's really not crazy. It'd be fine if you go, and I'll go with you. So we all went together. Haley freaked out when we left the station. Haley cussed at me on the way up the hill. But then when we got to the top of that vertical loop, we turned it around. We got her. So Jay and Haley, they don't like airtime. They don't like the feeling of their stomachs being dropped in them the way that you and I might. But those B&M loops, for somebody who is afraid, those B&M multi-loopers, that might be a good place to start, as long as they're not terribly afraid of going upside down.
This is the victory lap for both Little Miss Haley and Jay.
Rougarou's fire.
Yeah.
Go on Rougarou.
I think this is another underrated coaster. I think this is the most underrated coaster in the park for the general public. And because of that, I worry that this and Iron Dragon are on the chopping block. This and Iron Dragon are prime real estate. Like they're across the street from Siren's Curse, Valraven. These rides are right where the action is in the park, if you will. And they just don't draw lines. Like even on busy days, they don't draw lines. And I think it's a real shame. I think that I'll talk more about Iron Dragon in a little while, but I think that these are unique coasters with a lot of character, and I think it'll be difficult for Cedar Point to replace these two family thrill coasters with one family thrill coaster that will still fill the niche of two. Especially then they have the interaction with one another. So they sort of share a spot on the lake. It'll be a shame if we lose them, but like I said, they don't draw crowds, even on busy days. And so on days like we went, it was a walk-on. After Rougarou, we got on Millennium Force. I love Millennium Force. You love Millennium Force. Everyone who loves roller coasters loves Millennium Force. It's one of Intamin's masterpieces. I'll call it their masterpiece, but I'm uninformed. If I can get enough interest in me yapping about roller coasters to make some money on this channel, then maybe one day I'll make it to the Intimidator, and I can hold the two side by side. But until then, Millennium is the most, not to overuse the word, but the most intimidating roller coaster that I've ever ridden. going up that lift hill with the elevator cable lift is just so terrifying. I've ridden it 3 times in the last 2 months now. I think this is a wonderful ride. This is Sarah. This is her favorite ride in the park. I think this is the most relentlessly intense coaster in the park. This is one of the longer lines that we stood in both times. But at about 25 minutes each time, I have nothing to complain about. Like, Millennium lines can get X hours long on busy days, and it's always worth the wait. So it was definitely worth the 25-minute wait twice for us, once a day, once at night. Where the night rides are just unbelievable. If you can get a night ride on Millennium Force, you owe it to yourself. I grayed out during my morning ride, but not during my night ride. I think maybe because I had eaten or drank more water or something. But I like a gray out, so I was not disappointed. I was actually, second time I was like, hey, where was it? But we had a great time on the Millennium Force both times. Always do. Iconic coaster. Next we did Raptor. This is another one we did twice, once in the evening and once at night. This was Tristan's favorite ride this time around, and it was my son Eddie's favorite ride back in August. And I think it's easy to see why. This is one of the most exhilarating coasters in the park, even though it's about almost 22 years old. This is on par with the Millennium Force in intensity, even the Millennium Force is twice as tall. What is not to love? It flips you 6 times. Got a tight vertical loop. It's got a cobra roll, barrel roll, inline twist. Unlike all the other B&Ms in the park, it puts you through all these elements while it is really putting some strong, positive forward and lateral Gs on you. It is whippy. Way whippier than any of the B&Ms. If it wasn't so graceful about the other elements that sandwich these whippy elements, I wouldn't even believe this is a B&M. Like, it'd be easy to talk to somebody, to convince somebody otherwise, unless they've ridden any of the Batman clones and familiar with the inverted model. The other B&Ms in the park they feel like flight simulators, and if they're stunt pilots, like if Val Raven and Gatekeeper are stunt pilots, then Raptor's an F-16, and he comes in and does the exact same elements as these 2 competing stunt pilots, and then he just leaves the airspace without waiting to see who won. Just blasts in, pulls the same tricks, does it way faster, and blasts right back out. One more thing that I really love about Raptor is that it was made back in early to mid 90s, I think 94. It was before B&M started filling up the rails and rectangular spine of their coasters with sand. And so Raptor roars. Raptor is one of the loudest coasters in the whole park. Raptor going over the midway is one of my favorite sounds in the world. I don't think I'm the same species as people who say that Raptor's too loud. Keep Raptor loud. Gatekeeper was what we rode next. I had a goal going in to ride Gatekeeper twice, once on each wing, because I rode it back in August for the first time. I rode it on an inside seat, and there's a sign in the Gatekeeper station that says maximum height, and it may or may not be less than my actual physical height, but I figured I'd risk it anyways to go out doing what I love if anything goes wrong. And it was fine, obviously. I'm still here talking to you. But I wasn't aware of all the numerous head chopper effects that are on Gatekeeper. And so in the back of my head, I'm like, you're maybe an inch or 2 taller than the sign says, and you are going to hit your head on these things. And after having ridden it the first time, I realized that these things are actually 6 feet away from my head. Whether I'm taller than that sign or not, but and so I wanted to get on the wings and ride a little less defensively, and I was able to do that pretty much consecutively. We rode Gatekeeper out on the left wing, and then we rode Max Air, and then we rode Gatekeeper, and I was on the right wing. And this ride is so much better on the wing seats than it is in the center. and it is so much better on the left than it is on the right, and it is so much more forceful in the back than it is anywhere else in the back. And I love this coaster. Again, I'm a big fan of the way that B&Ms feel. Like, I have a trip planned in April or May to Great America, and I'm really looking forward to riding the B&M Hyper there because I'm a huge fan of the B&M feel. I feel like this Gatekeeper is another B&M that like Coaster Tube is sort of ambivalent about. I have a theory about that now, having ridden it in a few different places. And I think that is because of how much the ride varies from seat to seat. I say that, but look, obviously, if you only like positive G's and intensity and speed, if you only like Millennium Force and S&S launch coasters and Maverick and Top Thrill, then this is never going to be your favorite. But the back of this, if you think this coaster has no forces, ride it in the back left, and then come back and tell me that it has no forces, because the back is way more forceful than anywhere else on the ride. I think the variance on this model of the wing coaster model might just be more than what we're used to on a modern coaster, and more akin to what we're used to on an old wooden coaster where there's magic seats and the seats where you just really want to avoid. Again, if you're all about positive G's, if you're all about intensity, you may never love this ride. But I think there's room in the park for coasters that fly you around with grace. I really enjoy that.
Looks like we're gonna pop on to Max Air. We lost Jay and Haley, but that's all right. We'll find them. How hard is it to find a bald girl at Cedar Point? We'll do this Max Air swing, see what it's all about.
Max Air, if you asked me before this trip, I would tell you that I'm not really into flat rides, and I'd tell you that I'd rather spend my time on roller coasters, and I still would rather spend my time on roller coasters. It's still my first love. Max Air changed my mind about flat rides. This is a walk-on. I think that the way that the line is set up, like the ride can hold 50 people at once, and the line appears to have a capacity for like 70 to 100 people before you're spilling out into the midway. So if you're at Cedar Point, or if you're at Kings Island, there's another one at Kings Island, and you want to ride this, just get in line. It doesn't matter how long the line is, because you'll be through in 2 cycles anyhow. But it was a walk-on for us, and I had a hard. It was great. Like, I thought the forces were surprisingly good. The views were unbelievable on this ride. I had a hard time deciding if I liked going head-on more or if I liked swinging sideways more, because they were completely different experiences. Like, swinging head-on felt a lot like taking the drop of a B&M at like 70 miles an hour, like with that perfect parabola going up and down, and forward, like that perfect motion, super glass smooth motion. Swinging while we were turning with the rotation felt like an overbank turn on Millennium Force, where at 70 miles an hour, where you have the lateral movement and the swing. It was very cool. I highly recommend this ride, and I typically don't seek out spinning rides, so don't be turned off by the fact that it rotates. I don't care. Like, I'm not going to ride the Troika or the Octopus, but I really, really like the Max Air.
What are we thinking? We loved Max Air. Possibly the best flat ride I've ever ridden.
Beautiful swing ride.
So after we popped off Max Air, we did our right side ride at Gatekeeper, like I said, and then we walked Jay and Haley to Frontier Town, and they got their money's worth out of their haunt passes. And we looped back around, got our Magnum night ride in, and then we hopped on the Iron Dragon. Now, the Iron Dragon is iconic. There are only a few aero suspended coasters, these gondola coasters, still operating in the world, and it's one of the few like family thrill level coasters at Cedar Point. But it doesn't really get a lot of attention. I wouldn't, like I said, in the Rougarou section, because they share the same plot of land, I wouldn't be surprised if these two low-performing coasters, low-attendance coasters, got the axe in the next year or two, because Cedar Point, has all this attention. It gets all this love from the parent company, and it's only got the land it's got. I think that they should tear down the water park. It's a couple of crummy slides. Like a 3-hour drive. I passed several better water parks to get to Cedar Point. I'm not going to Cedar Point Shores for anything, so they could use that land for something else. But besides that, like it's a developed park, and they need to continue to innovate. I wish they could stay there forever, but I just wouldn't be surprised if they were on the chopping block. Skyhawk. Now, I had my mind changed about flat rides by Max Air, and so when I saw the Skyhawk, I'm like, oh, another swing. Let's hop on that. And I loved the Skyhawk, but it was not the same as the Max Air. I was confident, and it is so much different. This thing gets up to speed real quick. I think it's because of the counterbalance motion. It doesn't have to worry about straining itself when it's got two things of the same weight going against each other. The lap bar restraint on you feels like it's a little fluid, or like it's moving pneumatically a little bit. It made me feel less secure than I really was. And when that ride got up to its full height, I legitimately, truly thought for a second that I was going to die. And like that, it was the longest second of my life. I was looking directly at the Milky Way in the sky above, and I felt myself leaving the ride, and I felt a single tear come down my cheek. And I was like, here we go. And then the ride was still underneath me when the ride was already beneath me to save me, but I felt myself leaving it. And then I think that's part of the design of the lap bar restraint on this swing. At least I think so. It's all part of the ride. But so if you have any room on your lap bar in this, then this is the scariest ride in the park. Although I wasn't able to ride the Slingshot to verify that. Slingshot was closed all day. But this is the scariest ride in the park, especially no roller coaster ever made me feel like I was going to die. And Skyhawk definitely made me feel like I was going to die. So I'll be riding you again when I come back. That's an addictive feeling. Next, we had the Cedar Creek Mine Train. We weren't really going to ride this, but after we got off the Iron Dragon, we realized that with the Siren's Curse being closed for maintenance, and Gemini being closed, and the Corkscrew being closed, thankfully, because otherwise we would have rode that too. If we rode the Mine Train, that we rode all the adult rides in the park, and so we hightailed it back over to Frontier Town. We rode the Mine Train. I mentioned earlier, this is the worst ride for tall people in the park. Like Steel Vengeance will do some damage to your shins, but this ride is just uncomfortable the entire ride through. And then on top of that is a janky Arrow Mine Train, Arrow the Kings of Jank. It doesn't do a whole lot. Like the drop is not much to speak of, but it's cool that it drops you out over the lake. It's a very cool night ride too. The fog coming from the Hilo Weekends endeavors made the lake a very beautiful thing to have a small dive into. So it's better at night during the day. I rode it in the day with my son back in August. The helix on the Mine Train is probably the best part, but again, maybe the most painful part too. I guess maybe I'm a masochist, but we got this one under our belts, and we had done everything that was available to us, and so we decided we would get on Steel Vengeance before we met back up with our friends, and Steel Vengeance Night Ride was an incredible thing. Park operations. I can't believe how good park operations were on this Friday, September 26th. Park operations were phenomenal. I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of the Six Flags and Cedar Fair employees that were supposed to be working the Fall Festival at Michigan's Adventure or the Fright Fest at Six Flags America were shipped to Cedar Point for this because both of those events were canceled. More than one of the stations, there were more attendants than riders. Like the Cedar Creek Mine Train, there were more attendants than riders. Magnum, more attendants than riders. All day, there were 3 trains running on Millennium, Raven, Gatekeeper. Dragster actually had a 4th train come out partway during the day when the line got very, very long. I didn't even know there was a 4th train for Dragster. Basically, but every coaster that had 3 trains were running 3 trains. And this is in spite of the crowds at Cedar Point never getting above, like at 8 p.m. at opening ceremonies, there was 27% capacity. So this park was more empty than full. I got a re-ride on Steel Vengeance at like around noon. So that's how empty the park was on this day. It was bonkers. It was wonderful. All the drink stations were staffed. 90% of the restaurants were open. For those of you who drink alcohol, the bars were all open. The park was prepared for a busy day that never happened. I think that maybe they were getting ready for the next day because yesterday was much busier. Saturday, the 27th, was much busier. And maybe they just wanted to make sure everything was running just so and everybody was in their places, but it benefited us to no end. Like, it was the smoothest trip and really night and day from my trip to Michigan's Adventure at the beginning of the month. And the scare operations for Halloweekends. Halloweekends, I mean, it changed a lot of stuff, and it was just beautiful. Like the decorations were beautiful to look at during the day. In fact, look at this pumpkin display. It had a little squirrel who was using the pumpkins like a Ninja Warrior course, and I made friends with him. Watched him forage for goodies among pumpkins. And then at night, all of Frontier Town and the outskirts of Frontier Town just became a haunted trail that were so well staffed with scare actors. Like the place was full of scare actors. Coming from Flint, Michigan, where like we have haunted houses all over the place, but none of them have the financial backing of a multinational corporation. It was a sight to see. And I used to work at haunted houses, 18 years ago. So a lot of the magic is gone for me. It's not like a scary experience for me. Like I've seen how the sausage is made, but I can still thoroughly enjoy them for what they are. And I really, really enjoyed walking through the Frontier Town Halloween scares. Jay and Haley went through all the haunts except for the Conjuring, and they said that they were great, well worth the money. So if you're thinking about doing the haunted house aspect of Halloweekends, that's a thumbs up from our group. But I'm addicted to roller coasters, so I spent that time getting my night rides in. All right, that about does it for me. That'll wrap up my travel report of our trip to Halloweekends at Cedar Point. Tristan, Sarah, and I were able to get ourselves on every thrill and family thrill ride in the park, and that was open. And Jay and Haley were able to check out all the haunted stuff, and I was able to convert them into B&M Looper lovers, if not roller coaster enthusiasts. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, consider leaving a like, subscribing. If enough of you guys enjoy listening to me yap about roller coasters, then maybe somebody will send me to another roller coaster park and I can ride more of them and take you guys with me. I can only dare to dream, right?
Well, all in all, that was about the best day at Cedar Point anybody could ever hope to have. This video looks like dirt, and it'll probably sound like dirt too. We rode everything that was open, everything that was available to us. Most of them twice. If we liked them, we rode them twice. If we really liked them, we rode them at night again. Steel Vengeance 3 times. Rougarou 3 times for you guys. I don't even know where to start and where to stop. We got everything done in one day. No fast lane. None of that. Now we're headed home. We gotta go find Haley and Jay, who we converted into roller coaster people. Not airtime people, but roller coaster people. Vertical Drop Viking out.
Welcome to the Vertical Drop Viking. I'm Josef. Today, I'll be diving into 5 predictions for the next coaster at Cedar Point, from groundbreaking attractions to surprising transformations of your favorite classic. Come speculate with me. I think the first step to making good predictions is to rule out unlikely ones. There are certain coaster models that I think we can safely rule out, either because the niche is already filled by another coaster that isn't going anywhere, or because of an unwieldy footprint, or an unwieldy price tag, or both. First things first. Six Flags is not going to be buying any more hydraulic launch coasters. These are on their way out in a big way, and Six Flags hasn't bought one since 2005, and we all know how that ended for them. Cedar Point had Zamperla tear their hydraulic launch out of Top Thrill and install a series of LSM magnets. The hydraulic launch was unreliable, was expensive, had too many moving parts, especially compared to a magnetic launch, which has parts that don't ever come into contact with one another. Next, Cedar Point is not going to get another swing-launched coaster. Now, when I say a swing-launched coaster, I mean a coaster with a multi-pass launch and a rollback through those launches. So you move in one direction through a launch, you roll back, you pass through that launch again, at least one. Now, these are very trendy right now, with Curse of the Werewolf opening in Epic Universe, the Flash Coaster opening at Aqua Show in Portugal, Flash Vertical Velocity at Great Adventure in New Jersey, all opened up this year, and Voltron Nevera opened last year in Germany. They all feature a swinging launch somewhere in their layout. And a few years back, Icebreaker debuted at SeaWorld Orlando, and that's one of the more popular coasters there still to this day. Now, some of these are shuttle coasters, some of them are full circuit coasters. So their capacity varies from ride to ride, but most importantly, none of these coasters are Top Thrill 2. Top Thrill 2 is not only the tallest and fastest coaster with a swing launch, but it's the tallest in the world, unless and until Falcon's Flight opens up at Six Flags Qiddiya. Formula Rossa in Abu Dhabi took the speed record back in 2010. I think it would be hard to market a smaller multi-pass swinging launch coaster in the park that has Top Thrill 2. What else are we not getting? Well, I can confidently say that I think Cedar Point is not going to get another Giga. Millennium Force isn't going anywhere. It's still one of their flagship coasters. I don't see the management putting another coaster in the park that fits that same niche, especially considering the cost of these coasters and how much space these coasters take up. You can't make a 90-mile-per-hour coaster into a twister that fits on a small plot of land. You need a lot of room to make turns at Giga Coaster speeds, and you need a lot of money to put a Giga Coaster anywhere. Now, Six Flags can afford another Giga Coaster at Cedar Point. Cedar Point brings in enough money where they can afford any coaster. But there's really no point in competing with themselves here. This same logic is why I think that we can rule out a launched wing coaster like Thunderbird at Holiday World in Indiana. There's no reason to spend millions of dollars on a new coaster just to rub the proverbial polish off of Gatekeeper. I think that anything that comes in that fills a niche that's already filled in the park is likely going to be coming in a replacement capacity, not sitting alongside. Alright, now that we've established what we know we aren't going to get, let's take a look at my 5 predictions for Cedar Point's next coaster. Number 1. B&M Family Invert on Iron Dragon's plot. Iron Dragon will be 40 years old in 2027. There are only 5 of these inverted arrow coasters left in the world. And Arrow isn't around to produce replacement parts for it, having gone bankrupt in 2002 during the construction of X, Six Flags Magic Mountain. The inverted arrows that have closed have done so because of the maintenance cost incurred by the forces put upon the track by the swinging pendulum ride mechanism. It's not hard to imagine that Iron Dragon getting harder and harder to maintain as the years pass by. On top of this, the lines for Iron Dragon are typically very short, even on busier days in the park. It's slightly popular with younger coaster fans, and many kids still count it among their favorites, but it doesn't do much, and its age is hard to ignore. My prediction for what would go in this place is one of the new B&M family inverts, like Wolf's Revenge at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, or the big Lego coaster at Legoland Shanghai. These coasters are very popular right now, 6 being announced or constructed worldwide over the last 2 years. Now, Cedar Point does put a family inverted here on Iron Dragon's plot. Just a short walk down the midway from Raptor. I think the ride could be themed as a Junior Raptor. This would not only be a nod to the Raptor right down the midway, but also a nod to Cedar Point's history when Wilderness Run was named Junior Gemini. And imagine how cool a Junior Thrill ride would look painted up in Raptor Green. It could give younger thrill seekers who are not ready for the Raptor a stepping stone to it. Still a very cool experience if you've checked out any of the other B&M family inverts. They're still cool rides. My second prediction for what Cedar Point's next coaster could be is a Premier Rides magnetically launched coaster. Now, this could either be in the new Alpen Fury style with a sprawling layout that's full of airtime and inversions, or this could be a more typical spaghetti bowl coaster to better utilize space and have a smaller footprint. But if this is an Alpen Fury style, if this is a bigger coaster, and I'm going to go on a limb for Cedar Point and say that it would be, I'm going to put this underneath the Magnum in the space currently occupied by Cedar Point Shores. Now, I know there are people out there who enjoy Cedar Point Shores, and I have to imagine that most of them are local, because I'm not really sure who is traveling all the way to Cedar Point, the roller coaster capital of the country, and then paying extra money to spend time in this water park. This is not an extravagant water park or a top-tier water park by any means. And bear in mind, this is in the Great Lakes region, so water park weather, outdoor water park weather, holds up reliably for about 10 weeks out of the year, maybe 12 nowadays, but still, about a fifth of the year. The park itself is only open from late April to the beginning of November because the weather gets so unwelcoming here in the Midwest. It's got a sting having 18 acres of your park unusable for the first 8 weeks of the season and the last 6 weeks of the season. The only notable slides in Cedar Point Shores are the drop slides, which are also available at every regional water park I've ever been to in the entire country. Cedar Point Shores is a mismatch in quality compared to the entire rest of the peninsula. Now, Alpen Fury at Canada's Wonderland in Toronto has made huge waves this year, and I think it would fit Cedar Point's style to take this trendy new coaster model and build a record-breaking version of it. Now, a 200-foot plus hyper launch with 10 inversions, falling out towards the beach, and over Magnum's reverse helix down toward at the end of Magnum would be right in Cedar Point's wheelhouse. Now, barring this, even if Cedar Point isn't ready to let go of the water park, I think that a Premier Rides launch coaster is still in the park's future. They're very, very trendy. Again, if they're not ready to let go of the water park, they could put a spaghetti bowl type layout on a smaller plot of land. Number 3, a mock launched racing coaster. Now, I'm putting this on Gemini's plot. Gemini is showing its age in a big way. I personally, if I was in charge, I would never get rid of this ride. I personally hope they never get rid of this ride. But the last few seasons, it's been rare to even see the park operate both sides. It's a racing coaster that is regularly not racing. The ride is about as rough as Cedar Creek Mine Ride, which is its neighbor just across the way, its fellow aero tubular steel old school aero coaster, janky coaster. It's a touch less janky than Cedar Creek, but it's just as rough. It doesn't draw a fraction of the crowds that its neighbors in Steel Vengeance or Maverick do. And just like with Iron Dragon, Arrow isn't around to help the park fix this coaster. When those old steel tube tracks start needing to get replaced, they're going to find themselves at a very serious crossroads. They can either keep investing in this nearly 50-year-old iconic relic or replace it. This has been a big year for the racing coaster model with the introduction of Stardust Racers at Epic Universe. Now, unfortunately, the coaster's been in the news for the status of reasons. I'm sure you've heard by now that a paralyzed man was allowed to board Stardust Racers, and he suffered a truly terrible fate on the ride. He did not survive the ride. My heart goes out to him and his family. I wish nobody ever had to go through anything like that. Despite all that unpleasantness, the ride itself has been proven to be safe, like in spite of the accident. The accident has been determined to be no fault of the ride itself. Stardust Racers has been universally applauded by enthusiasts and the general public alike as being an exciting and fun ride that's full of airtime, full of great forces. Imagine a Gemini built by Mach using this launch racing coaster platform. This could be a legendary reimagining of one of Cedar Point's most iconic and classic rides. On top of that, consider for a second that Stardust Racers has a cool lighting effect where the track isn't lit up at night, the trains are. So they look like shooting stars on the track. This effect could be co-opted for the red and blue trains of Gemini. All you see approaching the ride at night is the streaking red and blue lights of the trains racing by one another. I'm calling this hypothetical racing coaster Gemini Rising to keep with the astrological theme that's been with the coaster since 1978. Number 4 is an RMC T-Rex on and around Millennium Island. Ever since Rocky Mountain Construction announced their concept for a full-scale single-rail coaster, enthusiasts around the world have been clamoring for a real-world installation. The Raptor model, a smaller-scale model, has been a huge hit, with some truly unique and inspired layouts on coasters like Jersey Devil and Railblazer. So far, it's been strictly the small-scale single-rail Raptor coaster. There have been no takers for the T-Rex. Not a single RMC T-Rex has been constructed or even purchased yet. Cedar Fair notably stopped buying RMCs in 2018. The reasons for this supposed falling out have been argued incessantly in all the coaster corners of the internet. I'm not going to get into those. But, regardless of all of that, Cedar Fair is no longer calling the shot for Cedar Point. Six Flags is. As far as Six Flags is concerned, don't call RMC a comeback. They've been here the whole time. Considering that Cedar Point is eternally obligated to be on the cutting edge of coaster technology, always has to have a new record holder, always has to have a new first for the country. I think Cedar Point is one of the most likely candidates for an RMC T-Rex installation. This would go perfectly back in the Millennium Midway towards Frontier Town, with lots of usable space, famously stretching out over Millennium Island. The island currently only houses 2 overbank turns of Millennium Force that overlap on themselves. And then in the fall, it's home to a haunted trail. This was formerly also home to part of Snake River Falls, as well as a playground area for kids that has been closed since 2022. All of these closed attractions suggest that something is planned for the area. And where else but Cedar Point to install the world's first T-Rex? Number 5, a GCI hybrid replacing the Blue Streak. I talked earlier about the Gemini being rough. Well, the Blue Streak is far, far worse. I rode this twice this season. It was rough in early August, and it was even worse in late September. I think those western winds blowing over the peninsula, coming over Lake Erie, and then blowing directly into Blue Streak, right into that old wooden structure, are not doing it any favors whatsoever. I know this prediction might upset some people because this is Cedar Point's only remaining wood track coaster. but I think one ride on this thing will show you that Cedar Point isn't overly interested in keeping that wooden track and that wooden structure from getting warped out to Kingdom Come. They have 12 newer coasters that are all made of a more durable and reliable material, and they still have to spend millions of dollars maintaining those every year, and those don't get rougher when it rains. This one does. So I think they've dedicated less resources to Blue Streak anyhow, whether they replace it or not. I personally would love to see a real wooden coaster installed at Cedar Point, but the problem arises when you consider how developed the park is. It would be difficult for them to tear down one single attraction and then put in a decent Woody in its place. Even Gemini's footprint is small compared to your average out and back coaster layout. I would love to see the Gravity Group or Intamin come in and install one of their prefabricated modern wooden coasters at Cedar Point, but I find it to be very unlikely. Especially the Intamin route, considering the absolutely staggering cost of their prefabricated wooden coasters. What I think is much more likely is a GCI hybrid coaster like Zambezi Zinger at Worlds of Fun in KSD-Mo. These coasters use a wooden stack for track, like a traditional wooden coaster, but they're constructed on a steel frame. Now, if Blue Streak was replaced with one of these new hybrid models, it could reduce the maintenance cost of the coaster by a significant margin. The company could simply over-engineer the steel support structure and then restack the coaster every year. Like, they could restack the track every year. This could keep the Blue Streak's ride experience essentially unchanged if they wanted to, but it would make it much, much easier to keep it from getting as rough as it does. I'm calling this one the New Streak, and this New Streak could sit on the exact same footprint and could even have the exact same layout as Blue Streak if they wanted. The Zambezi Zinger was also actually a nod to an old wooden coaster that had the same name and that it replaced. So it wouldn't be the first time that the GCI hybrid layout was used to pay tribute to an iconic coaster of yesterday. Those are my 5 predictions for the next roller coaster at Cedar Point. How likely do you think they are? Am I full of it? Please let me know in the comments. I promise I'll read them all. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving me a like. And if you want to join me for more roller coaster yapping, hit the subscribe button so I can invade your front page next week. Thanks again for joining me. Vertical Drop Viking out. It's not a controversial statement to say that the most exciting and marketable part of any roller coaster is the first drop. After all, we don't spend much time talking about the drop angle or height of mid-layout camelback hills. The selling point of a coaster is that first big drop, whether it's 200, 300, 400 feet or more, when the ride turns all of your potential energy into kinetic energy and sends you careening into the next element, achieving the top speed of the coaster and putting you under the most positive G-forces that the coaster has to offer, where you go from climbing to being weightless to being squeezed down into your seat like you're a spring. So knowing that everyone loves the first drop of a roller coaster, it follows that everyone would absolutely love a roller coaster that had a sheer vertical drop, right? Well, welcome to the Vertical Drop Viking. Today, I'm going to be defending the B&M dive coaster model. Now, you may be like I was and say, Josef, why are you defending the B&M dive coaster model? Everyone loves the B&M dive coaster model. Who's attacking it? I thought so too, until I went on the internet and started getting involved in coaster enthusiast circles online. Forceless. Doesn't do anything. Uninspired, boring layout. GP coaster. The list goes on and on. The hate that gets heaped on these models seems to know no end. When I went back to Valraven during Hollow Weekends 2025 for a night ride, I had this exchange with the ride operator. Hey, weren't you guys just here? Yeah, I love this one. Why? Millennium Force is right there. Riding that one again next. Hey, if you don't like B&Ms, can I have your hat? It's not even in my top 5 B&Ms. Fury 325, Orion, Leviathan. So the hate for these coasters is real, or at least the apathy, and I personally don't understand it. I love these roller coasters. I cannot wait to ride more of them. But before I get into all the reasons why I love these roller coasters, let's go over a brief history of the model. The first B&M dive coaster, Oblivion at Alton Towers, was literally a proof of concept. Its layout consists of the lift hill, the dive into a tunnel, and then an overbanked left turn. It quite nearly approaches the line between roller coaster and drop tower, but it stays on the roller coaster side of that line. The concept caught on, and the next installation was a clone of Oblivion at Jamfusan Fancy World in China. Shikra at Busch Gardens Tampa Bay was the third dive coaster, but the first one to feature a 90-degree drop, as well as the first one to include any other elements besides a drop and a left turn. Many of Shikra's elements became mainstays of the model, such as its Immelman inversion after the first drop, and its second 90-degree drop midway through the course of the ride. It also featured water scoops on the back of the train car that caused a splashdown after the second drop's tunnel. Griffin at Busch Gardens Williamsburg was a similar ride with an alternate ending, installed in 2007, and this was the last installation in the US for 9 years. B&M began offering both custom layouts and clones of Oblivion, Griffin, and Shikra to parks, based on their budget and specific footprint requirement. 2 Shikra clones were installed in China in 2008 and 2009. Kraka was built with a custom layout at Hyde Park in Germany in 2011, followed by an Oblivion clone in Italy in 2015. 2015 also saw the opening of Baron 1898, a heavily themed custom layout in the Netherlands. 2016 saw the beginning of a record-breaking arms race for the dive coaster. Val Raven opened at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, in 2016 as the tallest, fastest, and longest dive coaster. This marks the point where public interest in the dive coaster model began to peak, and B&M capitalized on this by continuing to market clones of their smaller dive models and small custom layouts, while also pushing the limits of the dive coaster to new and greater heights. South Korea welcomed the addition of a Griffin clone in 2018 named Draken, while Liseberg Park in Sweden constructed Valkyria, the tallest and longest dive coaster in Europe. Continuing the record-breaking trend, Yukon Striker came out in 2019, tying Valraven's height record from the ground, but beating its dive record by diving into a tunnel, and setting the most inversions record at 4, a record that would last for 6 seasons. Emperor at SeaWorld follows the layout conventions of the newer dive coasters, but forgoes the mid-course brake run, offering a more relentless ride that put Emperor at the top of many enthusiast dive coaster rankings for several years. Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger at Six Flags Fiesta Texas opened in 2022 as a record breaker not in height, length, or inversions, but dive angle. Eschewing the 90-degree drop that had been the standard since Shikra, Cliffhanger was the first with a beyond vertical 95-degree drop. This cartoonishly themed ride was initially intended to be installed at Six Flags Great America in Illinois, but Great America decided they, quote, wanted a taller, more intense dive coaster with more inversions, end quote, and sent that coaster, Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger, to Six Flags Fiesta Texas. Iron Menace at Dorney Park came next, immediately tying the drop angle record and also including one of B&M's classic angled loops, an element that harkens back to their stand-up coaster model. After Iron Menace came that taller, more intense dive coaster with more inversions that was custom ordered by Six Flags Great America, Wrath of Rakshasa. This is one of my most anticipated rides on my upcoming trip next spring to Illinois. Taking the record for dive angle from Cliffhanger by 1 degree, and the record for most inversions from Yukon Striker, but also taking a page out of Emperor's book by eschewing the mid-course brake run. This looks to be a more relentless and thrilling installation of the dive coaster than anything before it. That is, until 2 weeks ago. Six Flags just announced that they are going to be building a Giga dive coaster, Tormenta Rampaging Run, next season at Six Flags Over Texas. This coaster hasn't even broke ground yet, and is already at the very top of my bucket list. 309 feet tall, with 5 inversions, Tormenta is set to shatter not just the dive coaster model records, but is set to be the first coaster over 300 feet in the entire world to feature inversions at all. The first Giga coaster with inversions. Now these inversions are record-breaking in themselves. A 218-foot Immelman turn follows the first dive, the tallest Immelman inversion in the world, and the first roller coaster inversion in the world to break 200 feet. Now, following the old naming conventions, this is a hyper inversion. This Immelman sidewinders you to the right, immediately into the tallest vertical loop in the world at 179 feet. When this coaster opens, it'll immediately have the world record, the first and third highest inversions on any roller coaster in the world ever. And these are consecutive elements on this roller coaster. This is absolutely nuts. The first tallest and third tallest inversions in the world are right in a row on this roller coaster. Now, unlike Rakshasa and Emperor, Tormenta does feature a mid-course brake run. Now, you Immelman into that mid-course brake run, which all the Immelmans on the previous dive coaster models, for the most part, are in the sidewinders or the beginning of dive loops. This Immelman takes you into the mid-course brake run. The mid-course brake run takes you to a second near vertical drop. Now, these mid-course brake runs on the dive coaster models are one of the things that enthusiasts decry. They say that it kills the pacing of these coasters. Now, I personally disagree. We'll get more on that later. But in this case, Tormenta does everything in its power to fight the criticism that it is a pacing killer by following up this second near vertical drop into a cutback. The first cutback on any B&M coaster ever. First time B&M has ever used a cutback element. This cutback sends riders into the long, diagonal, characteristic dive coaster brake run. Now, I can understand the criticism of the very first iterations of this coaster, calling the layout boring. Now, like I said before, Oblivion, it's essentially a tracked dive tower. It had one trick. That trick is a tried and true trick of a face down 0G drop. Now that trick is inimitable. There's nothing else you can do to sustain 0Gs that long. B&M is very good at sustaining 0Gs, but nothing can sustain 0Gs as long as a free fall, and this is a free fall face down. A lot of the times into a tunnel. Very hard element to imitate. Very hard element to beat. I don't understand the criticism of the layout on rides like Valraven and Yukon Striker. I don't agree with the conclusion that these layouts are boring or that these layouts are uninspired. I certainly don't understand calling them forceless. The positive Gs that you get in these valleys at the bottom of these 0G drops are regularly some of the highest positive G spikes in their respective part. Now, they're not sustained G-force moments, and I think that this is where some coaster enthusiasts mark their criticisms down. I think they say when coaster enthusiasts get strong positive G moments, they want them to be sustained so that they can feel that gray out moment, like on a Camelback Hill or a huge overbank turn on Intamin Giga. That's not the trick these are doing. These are spiking the positive Gs, springing you down into your seat, and then unspringing you and keeping you in 0G as long as B&M can possibly do so. All the inversions on these coasters, all the inversions on Valraven, all the inversions on Yukon Striker, you are weightless essentially from the moment the inversion begins until you're a quarter of the way into the next element. The B&M has really mastered the art of floater airtime, of 0G airtime. Now, are you going to love this coaster? Are you going to love these coasters if all you like is ejector? No, they don't offer ejector. They simply don't. It's not part of their repertoire. But what they do, what is part of their repertoire, they do very, very well. Now, the visual spectacle of these coasters is better in the front, and the forces are better in the back. I'll admit that. The forces are not evenly distributed throughout this coaster, and they're not evenly distributed through any coaster. I think that the expectation that they're better distributed is applied to these coasters because they have 3 rows, whereas a traditional coaster train could be 18 rows back. And you expect differences in forces when you have 18 rows. So you expect less difference in forces when you have 3 rows. But there is a difference in forces between these 3 rows. You have to take the forces that would be applied to the front of a train and to the back of a train and compress it, and that's what you're dealing with a dive coaster train. So you're still going to get more forces, more positive, more negatives, and ultimately more laterals as well in the back row of these dive coaster models. And you're definitely going to get more of the lateral and the rolling experience out on the wings than you are over the middle of the track. But the visual spectacle of these roller coasters is simply better front and center. I don't think it necessarily works against these coasters to have more visual spectacle in the front and more forces in the back. But I do think that it can warp people's experiences or expectations of these coasters. An enthusiast who's into positive G's, who's into ejector airtime, who goes into these coasters and sits in the front, they're going to go online and they're going to say, this coaster doesn't do anything. And I think that's where these negative comments are coming from. Enthusiasts should be riding this on the back wing. People who aren't sure if they like roller coasters should be riding it front and center. Anybody who is going into this looking for the most intense experience that they can get from these coasters should be in the back, should be on the wing. Ultimately, I just can't agree with the conclusion that these coasters are boring. I love the feeling of being flown around with grace. I love the feeling of floater airtime. Very few coasters get you floater airtime like a B&M dive coaster. And I don't think that relentless force assaults are the only good roller coasters in the world. I don't think they're the only coasters with value. I think that there's something to be said about the coasters that fly you around like you're effortlessly soaring. And even with the existence of the B&M wing coaster, you would think that that would be the peak of the flying sensation, being out on the wing of the coaster. I think that if I was given the ability to fly of my own volition, if I could fly around effortlessly, like I think a lot of us are pretending we can do when we get on these rides, I think the very first thing I would probably do, call me crazy, maybe you too, but the very first thing I would do is fly up as high as I reasonably could, dive straight down at the earth, and close to the last second, I would loop back up. And I can't think of anything more fun sounding than that. And that's these things' trick. That's these things' gimmick. What is not to love? Oh, call me not. Another criticism that I want to address is pacing. They say that these coasters go too slowly, or they say that the mid-course brake run kills the pacing of them. Now, I've said before, I'll say again, I love fast, relentless coasters. I love Intamins. I love, Top Thrill. I love launched coasters. I love going fast. I love positive G's. I love graying out. I love blacking out. All of that. I don't think that is the only thing that makes a good coaster. I don't think that relentlessness is the only thing that makes a good coaster. I think that the pacing of a roller coaster is and should be handled like the pacing of a song. And in that way, Intamin is Slayer. They're all of Intamin's coasters, all of Slayer's songs are fast, relentless, heavy, they hit you hard, and then you're left to figure out what happened to you when the song is over. And those are great. I am not here to knock Slayer. I love Slayer and I love Intamin. I could ride the Millennium Force all day if they'd let me. Although sometimes they'll get in the way and tell me I'm too tall, so I have to slouch down and squeeze underneath the little bar. But I don't think that Slayer songs are the only good songs in the world. And I don't think that Relentless Force Assaults are the only good roller coasters in the world. I don't think they're the only coasters with value.
And on that token, I'm glad there are songs in the world that aren't Slayer songs. To keep the metal music analogy going, I'm glad there are Opeth songs, and I'm glad that there are B&Ms to behave like Opeth songs that can have grace and dynamics, but also aggression, and have that dynamics really be where the ride shines. The disparity between the calm, the disparity between the grace and the aggression makes the aggression hit harder in the situations where it appears. And I think B&M and Opeth do that better than Intamin and Slayer.
The last criticism that I want to address is that it's a GP coaster, or a coaster for the general public, not for coaster enthusiasts. To me, this is kind of a weird install, but it's not a new one. It's not one I'm unfamiliar with. I'm not unfamiliar with the concept of people attacking something because it's popular, especially the perceived elite members of a subculture distancing themselves from the product that they may perceive to not be for the elite, or just to be for normies. I grew up playing metal music and listening to metal music, and I've seen it before. I'm sure I'll see it again. And you know what? When I was a teenager and in my early 20s, I'm positive that I was one of the more guilty parties of this, where you're going to bring me some band that's on the radio, and I don't listen to the radio. That's for normies. Like I listen to extreme death metal and black metal, and thankfully, I've grown out of this mindset, and I can enjoy. I still enjoy metal, but I enjoy whatever music makes me feel good. I enjoy whatever roller coasters makes me feel good, and I thoroughly encourage everyone else to do the same. If you feel like you need to disparage B&Ms to prove to somebody that you are more of a roller coaster enthusiast than somebody else, and I feel really, really sorry for you. These are top tier amusement rides. They're great fun. They're some of the most fun I've ever had. I absolutely love these rides. If that makes you more of an enthusiast than me, then have fun, because I'm having a great time riding them. And if you are stubbornly going to cling on to this mindset, I do have some terrible news for you. You might want to skip ahead a little bit, but when you're not at your favorite park, the GP rides your favorite coaster. They do. The normies ride your favorite coaster. You're not even there to tell them that they're not experiencing it to the fullest like you are, or whatever fantasy is going on in your mind. Because everybody likes roller coasters, dude. This upcoming spring, my son and I have a trip planned to Six Flags Great America in Gurnee, Illinois, and Wrath of Rakshasa is probably my most anticipated ride. I cannot wait to get on one of these dive coasters without a mid-course brake run to see if the enthusiasts are right about the pacing being better with a less dynamic and more relentless pacing. And after that, I officially need to plan a winter trip to Dallas, not a summer trip, because Texas and Vikings do not mix very well, and you can see how translucent my flesh is. But sometime in next winter, Six Flags Over Texas can expect to see me, because I must ride Tormenta Rampaging Run. That is top of my bucket list. I love all roller coasters. I love every roller coaster I've ever ridden on, even the bad one. But these vertical dive coasters have a special place in my heart. Someday, I hope to ride a Gerstlauer vertical dive. Someday, I hope to ride a Gerstlauer vertical dive coaster and be able to compare the forces, compare the experience, and see how Gerstlauer holds up to my current favorite in B&M. What is it? Knott's Berry Farm. Hopefully someday I'll make it out to Knott's Berry Farm and be able to ride the Gerstlauer there. Hang time. I'm also looking forward to getting on a flying coaster while we're at Great America and seeing how that holds up with the experience of flight that I love so much and that B&M dive coasters have been unmatched in giving me thus far. If there's another coaster model out there that you think could do it even better, please let me know in the comments so I can add it to my bucket list. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving me a like, sharing with a friend, subscribing if you want to see more. I intend to release more videos, at least weekly, where I continue to yap about roller coasters, much like this. So if you enjoyed this, hit subscribe. Don't let me miss you. I've been Josef, Vertical Drop Viking out. Hello, welcome to the Vertical Drop Viking. I'm Josef. Today I want to count down my 10 most anticipated rides at Six Flags Great America. I grew up in Flint, Michigan, and all of my roller coaster experiences growing up were either at traveling fairs and carnivals, Michigan's Adventure, or Cedar Point. My son has recently gotten more and more into thrill rides lately, and it's a perfect excuse for me to gather him up and take him to Illinois next spring so that we can ride every roller coaster there. We're looking forward to expanding our credit list and getting another park under our belt. These are the rides that I'm most excited about and why. Let's start with some honorable mentions. Although it's not a roller coaster, the Sky Striker is making my list of honorable mentions. I really enjoyed this swing when I rode it as Max Air at Cedar Point. That said, unless it's a walk-on, we're not going to be riding this ride on our trip to Great America. There are too many coasters that we need to get under our belt first. We can't spend any time waiting in line for any flat rides. Even though these truly are great flat rides, I do recommend these spinning swings. Next up in the honorable mentions is the Dark Knight Mad Mouse Coaster. Now, if we can get everything else done in the park, I'd be happy to ride this. I don't hate a Wild Mouse coaster, and this Wild Mouse also having dark ride elements makes it even more appealing to me. That said, it is just a Wild Mouse coaster, and there are 10 coasters in the park that I want to ride even more than it. Wild Mouse coasters aren't my favorite. I don't plan on going so late in the season that I'm going to be dying to get out of the sun. If I have to miss a single grown-up coaster in the park, it's going to be this one. American Eagle is on the honorable mentions list simply because there is a allegedly much better wooden roller coaster right nearby. I intend very much to ride that. If American Eagle's a walk-on, we'll walk on, but I'm not going to wait in line for it. Coaster Tube has informed me that it's a very rough ride anyhow. Whizzer. Now the Whizzer actually looks pretty cool for a family coaster, and it may actually be cool to get on a Schwarzkopf. I've never been ridden a Schwarzkopf coaster before. I'm interested in getting on that piece of coaster history. Now that said, I am a giant man, and my son at 14, this is before the winter, is about 6'1". So if he gets any bigger, I'm not sure the two of us are going to fit in that little Schwarzkopf car. So the Whizzer might have to stay on the honorable mentions list for us. Last up on the honorable mentions list is the Giant Drop. I actually am kind of interested in riding the Giant Drop. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get my son on it. We'll see. I'll report back. Tell you if I was able to twist his arm and get him on the Giant Drop. I love a drop tower. Any sort of drop I love. All right, let's get into the list proper. We'll start with number 10, Demon. Now, I had a great time on the Corkscrew at Michigan's Adventure. Significantly less of a great time on the Corkscrew at Cedar Point, but I know I'm capable of having fun on these aero loopers. And now that I know about the leg room on the front seat of these aero loopers, I'm much more inclined to get on one. Like I'm going to wait for that front seat so I can stretch my legs out and not get crammed into that old aero train. But if I can get that front seat, I'm getting on the aero looper. And Demon has such a cool custom layout. It's an awesome looking paint job. It's great theming, especially for a Six Flags park, which is not famous for theming. If Demon's not open when we go, it won't break my heart. But if it is open, I'm really looking forward to hopping on. Number 9 is X Flight. Now, I am a fan of Gatekeeper at Cedar Point. I know that not everybody is. I think I really did enjoy riding Gatekeeper. I enjoy the soaring, floating, zero-G feeling that you get from that B&M wing coaster model. So I am looking forward to riding X Flight. Now that said, X Flight stats are not as impressive. On paper, it appears to be a less impressive Gatekeeper. And that's why it's only made it to number 9 on my list of most anticipated rides. So 44 feet shorter, 12 miles an hour slower, 1 fewer inversion. On paper, it's a less impressive Gatekeeper. That's why it's only made it to number 9 on my list. Number 8 is Batman. This is a B&M invert. This is the B&M invert, the original, number 1. Now, Raptor is my son's favorite coaster ever, and where better to take him next after he's fallen in love with the Raptor than to where it all began, the very first B&M inverted coaster model. I say model, the very first B&M inverted coaster, the one that created the model, the one that has been cloned countless times at other Six Flags parks. This is the one. My son is extremely excited to ride it, obviously, and I'm excited to bring him. I'm excited to see it. Now, that said, I've heard, and I can sort of see from the stats, sort of like with X-Flight, this has the potential to just be a less impressive version of a ride that I already enjoy. So I've sort of tempered my expectations, knowing going in that Batman the Ride is not going to be quite what Raptor is. Raptor elevated the ride, brought it to another level for Cedar Point in the 90s when the coaster model was still very new and fresh. It doesn't look nearly as exciting as Raptor to me, but with how popular it is and how many times it's been cloned, I'm looking forward to getting on it, and I'm hoping to be pleasantly surprised. Number 7, we have the Joker. Now, I have heard so many mixed things about these S&S 4D free spin coasters. Some people absolutely love these coasters. They applaud their ability to create inversions where there are none. They applaud the sort of random element of this coaster where you don't know going in how many inversions you're really going to undertake. Other people hate these coasters. They say that you'll spin once if you're lucky. And other people yet hate these coasters because they spin so much, because they spin more times than they were expecting. So everyone's expectations of these coasters are all over the map, and everyone's opinions of these coasters are all over the map. But it's a totally new experience for me, and I'm really looking forward to getting on it. I highly doubt that I'm going to be in the camp that thinks it spins too much. Now, that said, me and my son weigh pretty close to the same. So unless we can get mismatched balance with some other people, we might be in a position where we're not going to spin this much. And that is a concern of mine. I really hope that me and my son are able to get our car really going, really spinning, so we can really experience this ride to its fullest. And I can't wait to get a real impression of this so that I can form my own opinion. Number 6 is Viper. This is a PTC Woody. It is a clone of the original Coney Island Cyclone. Now, I've never ridden the Coney Island Cyclone or even been to New York City. So I'm very excited to get on this recreation of it and experience that little piece of roller coaster history without having to go to New York City. All right, now we're getting into the top half. These are my absolute must rides for our trip to Six Flags Great America. Let me know in the comments if your favorite didn't make the top 5, and let me know why I'm wrong, because I haven't gone yet. I can still, my mind can still be changed. So please, if I'm missing out on something great, if your favorite didn't make it to the top 5, or if your favorite's in the honorable mentions, please let me know in the comments. Please don't let me miss your favorite. All right, number 5, we have Superman Ultimate Flight. Now, this B&M flying coaster is one of the biggest reasons why I chose Six Flags Great America to be me and my son's next coaster destination. I love the experience of flying. I love the floater airtime that you get on other B&M coasters that are focused. I have a flight simulator focus. I love B&M, and I love the experience of flying. This is B&M trying to create the experience of flying deliberately. I'm extremely looking forward to that. I know these are very divisive in the community. I anticipate that this is going to check a lot of boxes for me. Community be damned. I think most of all, I cannot wait to experience that pretzel loop. I think that I've said it, I've mentioned this before in previous videos, but I think a pretzel loop is one of those elements where if I had wings on my back, you'd catch me doing crap like that all day, just looping, crisscrossing my own path all day. And I'm really looking forward to being brought through a maneuver like that by B&M. Number 4, Max Force. This S&S air launch coaster will be my first air launch coaster, my first pneumatically launched coaster. And this coaster is actually the very last pneumatically launched coaster in the world operating. There's still some standing. Now, I truly cannot wait to experience the torque of that launch. That acceleration is calling me. Besides that, it's 2 unique elements in the dog tongue and the eponymous Max Dive Loop are extremely enticing. I can't wait to experience these 2 completely unique elements on this brutally fast launch coaster. I'm really, really looking forward to the torque of that acceleration. This appears to be one of the more forceful and violent rides in the park, and I am a fan of that type. Like I love the floater, but I need a little bit of intensity mixed in over my day too. So I'm looking forward to Max Force very much. Number 3, we have Raging Bull. Now, Magnum XL 200 might be one of my favorite coasters of all time. It was definitely my first favorite coaster that I ever got on. Like the first time I was ever able to say that was my favorite. And I also, as you may know from watching my channel, if you've watched it at all, I'm a big fan of B&Ms. I love that Grace. I love that floater. Now, Raging Bull, number 3 on my list. This is B&M's version of a Hyper. This is B&M making a Magnum. To say that I'm excited to see how this is executed, I think is a huge understatement. It is going to be hard for me not to love this coaster. Massive airtime hills, glass smooth B&M experience, soaring, airtime, ejector, floater, a unique layout with a hammerhead turn would be my first hammerhead turn. Huge figure 8 helix. I'm really looking forward to Raging Bull. They all put this coaster at number 3 on my list. At number 2, we have Goliath. Now, just look at this thing. This hybrid lift hill at the beginning of Goliath makes this thing look like a roller coaster from a movie. And in the movie, roller coasters don't exist, and somebody had to create them from scratch. This is such a cool looking lift hill. It is such a bizarre looking lift hill. This will be my first wood tracked coaster that has inversions. I'm a huge fan of loopers, and I'm also a huge fan of woodies. Shivering Timbers might be my favorite coaster of all time. I love all the B&M loopers, Valraven, Gatekeeper, Rougarou, all the ones that I've rode. I enjoyed the SLC that I rode, but the SLC at Michigan's Adventure is in really good shape, allegedly, compared to a lot of the SLCs in the country. So, I'm a huge fan of inversions. I'm a huge fan of a great wooden coaster. This is my first wood track coaster with inversions. This is my second RMC after Steel Vengeance. So, Shivering Timbers is on my favorite list. Steel Vengeance is on my favorite list. And here we have RMC, the company that made Steel Vengeance, making a ground-up wooden coaster with inversions. If this isn't one of my favorite coasters of all time when I get off of it, I will be surprised. I'm beyond excited to experience RMC's take on a traditional wood track coaster, even though they skirt tradition and spit in the face of tradition when it behooves them. When tradition doesn't serve them, they spit right in the face of tradition, and good on them for it. With a 40-foot taller lift hill than my favorite Woody and Shivering Timbers, and an 85-degree drop going into a tunnel, I think it's going to be hard for Shivering Timbers to compete with this ride. So I'm really looking forward to riding this one. Number 1, my most anticipated coaster that I want to ride next year at Six Flags Great America is the Wrath of Rakshasa. Now, I love Valraven. I'm sure if this isn't your first time to my channel, then I'm sure you know that I'm a big fan of the B&M dive model in general. I love its swooping, flowy, zero-G gracefulness. And Wrath of Rakshasa looks like Valraven with the intensity turned up to 10 and the mid-course brake run thrown in the trash. Now, it's not as tall as Valraven. It's not trying to be a record breaker in that regard. But it does boast 2 more inversions. It's a faster paced ride than Valraven or Iron Menace. And I personally cannot wait to experience the forces of a dive coaster that isn't trying to be purely dynamic and graceful. Now, I've said many times before, and I'm sure I'll say again, I love the dynamic pacing that B&M often utilizes when they're designing their rides. Intensity is not the only positive trait that a roller coaster can have. But that said, intensity definitely is a positive trait that a roller coaster can have, and I'm very much looking forward to experiencing the gracefulness of the dive coaster model with the intensity and the pacing turned up to 10. Now, I have heard mixed reviews on a B&M Rattle, on allegedly B&M's newer rides are not being built to the same strict tolerances that their older rides are, and that have been built to for 30 years, and that everyone has come to rely on them for having the smoothest rides. And allegedly these rides are coming out of the box not as smooth as they're expected to be, and with a noticeable rattle. So I will be happy to report back after, I think May is where we're looking for Six Flags Great America. I'll be happy to report back after May and let you guys know if I think the B&M rattle is real or if it's just coaster enthusiasts being dramatic on the internet again. But whether or not there's a rattle, I really anticipate that 96-degree drop into all those inversions, all that floater, is still going to put Wrath of Rakshasa near the top of my coaster list. And that's it. That concludes my top 10 most anticipated rides list at Six Flags Great America. I'm really looking forward to getting down to Gurnee, Illinois, and making this list a reality and reporting back to you, telling you where I was right, where I was wrong. If you want to let me know ahead of time where I'm wrong, again, I would love to be proved wrong. I would love to be told I was wrong before I got there and I make the mistake myself. Please let me learn from your mistakes. Is Rakshasa really, really rough? Like, is it going to beat the hell out of me? Am I wrong about Goliath? Am I going to miss out if I put American Eagle on the back burner for Goliath? Please let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this yapping video, please consider leaving a like so that more people can see the next one. If you really enjoyed it and you want to see more of me, hit subscribe, and my next video will show up on your front page. Thank you so much for watching. I have been Josef, Vertical Drop Viking out.